Today, I was able to make it back to City of Asylum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. City of Asylum is an organization dedicated to helping artists from all over the world facing political persecution and death. They provide them and their families with housing, a living stipend, healthcare, and the opportunity to safely create and be artists. A couple months back, they invited me to give a book talk, and I was able to meet some of these artists from all over the world. Sudan, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Egypt, Algeria, Ukraine, Cuba, just to name a few. I knew I had to come back and interview them in detail for the podcast. Now more than ever, this felt needed. We're currently facing our own version of censorship. Our own regime feels very hands-on about what can and cannot be said. I loved this conversation about art and how forever, no matter how you try to shut art down and suppress free expression, it will always find its way to the surface. Always. I am an artist, and this is one of the most important conversations I've ever had about why art is so important and medicinal, now as much as ever. Enjoy.
I'm Catherine Skolnicki, and I'm the residency manager at City of Asylum.
Rani Mamoun, Sudanese writer and activist and writer in residence at City of Asylum, Pittsburgh.
Alexander Frazenko, Ukraine.
Are all the artists in residence writers, or are they different types of artists?
Currently, all of the artists are writers and or multidisciplinary artists.
What's your discipline?
Life.
Living.
Writing poetry and prose and making music, make pictures, move, and also make stills. It's all different tools of the same thing. Self-expression.
And your discipline?
I'm a non-fiction writer, also assist, especially in the Sudanese political scene and literature critics.
So how does the process work for an artist? I'm assuming something happens at home that says, I need asylum, and then how do they find you, or you find them, or who wants to speak to that process?
So City of Asylum in Pittsburgh is connected with an organization called ICORN, International Cities of Refuge Network. In Pittsburgh, we are the U.S. headquarters. There are two other cities that are cities of asylum. So Detroit is one, and Ithaca, New York is the other. ICORN is connected with a large network of about 91 cities in the world that commit to hosting writers or other artists who are facing persecution for their work. And they have a process where they have an application online that artists and writers can apply to. Once a writer, artist, scholar applies to ICORN, then the headquarters team will process the application, reach out to cities, ask if they have availability or resources to support this artist. There's a lot of factors to consider. Is the writer a single person? Do they have a family? Do they have lots of children? What languages do they speak, where it might be easier to place them in certain parts of the world? What mediums do they express? So there might be some cities that are much more receptive to musicians and writers because there's a community already there in place that can really support them, as opposed to certain other parts of the world. So most of the cities are in Europe, but it is expanding into our hemisphere or our time zones, So there's 2 cities in Mexico, 2 cities in Brazil, and they're really trying to make the cities expand to places that are closer to where a majority of the artists and the writers are applying from, which is parts of Northern Africa, Asia.
For me, actually, I applied to ICORN, and when I applied, I didn't know where I would be, where I will spend my life in. So you will face that uncertainty. But what pushed me to apply for ICORN is what I was facing in Sudan under the dictatorship regime, Omar al-Bashir regime. Because of my activist and my writing and my public opposing the government policy and of course the horror that they're doing, I had to make this decision. And I applied for ICORN and waited for a while. And then I was waiting for a city to just invite me and my 2 daughters. And I'm lucky enough that City of Asylum Pittsburgh made that invitation. And yeah, we are here since 2019, right before the pandemic. I have 2 daughters, Ragad and Diane. And when we came here, Ragad was 10 years old and Diane was only 2. She lived here more than in Sudan, actually twice her age and plus 1 year than Sudan. So she's
a Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Pittsburghese.
Definitely she is, and she corrects my accent all the time.
How long have you been in Pittsburgh?
2 years. My publisher from New York reached out to me saying, "Hey, this program that you can apply to, and I have never applied to anything like that in my life. I have never get any grant for anything, and I felt like even if I'll apply to something like that, I will never get it, you know." And I applied to this program, and I got selected. And from that moment, it took half a year, I guess, to make it all happen. And Ukraine, from the surface, looks like a country fighting for democracy, but the insides are way darker and way more complicated. When you try to talk about it, even to your fellow Ukrainians, you get a lot of hate because they think that you just have to stick to the general line. We get a lot of pressure. Our fellows go to prisons, and you just fight for your right for the free will. I did not know that there is something else. That you can feel like the world is free around you. Only when I came here I realized that. But also it was a painful process realizing that, because all the connections that I had in Ukraine ended when I came here. Because for Ukrainians, you are considered a traitor when you leave Ukraine.
So will you go back? Are you like...
You know, I never thought that I would want to go back. But now when I see a picture of my hometown on the internet, it just brings me tears, because I know that I cannot go back. I mean, meaning that I can go back, but then I'll go to jail, or I will go to the front line, because there is no other way. Ukrainian embassies all around the world stopped serving to people that are not in Ukraine, especially men. It's an official statement from Ukrainian government. If you want to get any service from Ukrainian embassy as a Ukrainian citizen, the only service would be get you a ticket to the front line. Get a military ticket and a ticket for the flight back. So, for example, people that had their passports expired, they are nobodies in the world right now, you know, and they cannot renew it. So how can you love your home country if that country hates you? I mean, I still love my country, but it's more of a love and an idea of the country that I have in my imagination. Those poets that are no longer needed because of the war. During the wartime, you don't have to talk about anything else but war. And I thought, you would not have lullabies for your children in 10 years, because you're not supposed to talk about anything else. And that would make our culture militarized, and we would lose all that was left humane in us.
I don't know, Rania, if you want to talk about the circumstances that led you to have to leave, if you want to, or any of the challenges that you faced.
We had this regime, Omar al-Bashir regime, and it is a combination between military and Muslim Brotherhood, which are the ultimate, if you could say, the totalitarianism that you could have. And I grew up in this atmosphere. Everything related to religion, Islam, everything also related to very, very, very margin of freedom. For example, the arts, it didn't become art anymore. Even if you have a party, you have to have time for that party to end, even inside your home. So it seems like they were fighting everything that could bring life. Theater have been closed, the songs changed, and in certain period of years, all of the narratives and the media was talking about fighting the war, the civil war in the South. It was a war for people who wanted development, who wanted justice, who wanted equality in everything. Given that the majority of the Southern Sudanese people are from African tribes, pure, and the majority in the north, they are mixed between Arabs and African. So when the government, the late government came, through the coup, they turned this war into religious, ethnic war between Muslim and Christian, between Arabs and Africans. In 2013, I participated in a peaceful demonstration on the streets. And they arrested me, and I got beaten very hardly and threatened by gang rape and harassment from the authority itself. Me and my brother and sister. And I almost lost my eye because they injured me. I didn't wear a glass before this happened. After we got out, they took us to trial. And it was a long trial, like 2 months and something. Although it's could be like in one session and then that is, but the trial go on and on and on. But the good thing from all of this was friends and myself, we like founded this movement, Medicine Resistance Committees, and it is committees, resistance committees from the neighborhood of Sudan, of the cities in Sudan, from like bottom to top, and working against the government for 6 years underground until we came in public in late 2018 when the revolution started. I've been followed, couldn't like publish inside Sudan and so on, so that what led me to apply for ICORN.
And who told you about ICORN? Like, I know your publisher told you. Who told you?
Yeah. Okay. So ICORN, when in 2013, when this happened, a friend, she's Slovakian, and she came to Sudan, and she said, "Why not you apply for ICORN?" But at that time, I was so full of no. I'm not going out. I'm not. This will be like defeat. I will not surrender. So I said, okay, thank you and everything. And actually she started to, because my English at that time wasn't good, so she started to help me fill the application. It's big application. Then we did it, and I didn't think twice, because if I did that, it would say, no, I wouldn't. So yeah, this is, and I'm glad. I'm glad we did that. I'm glad that my 2 daughters now are in safe place. And actually, even after we came here for a while, my older one, she had nightmares because what she faced in Sudan. She would see me captured by police, and the police came, and every day it's a different thing, but the same big picture, that some people who would come and take her mother from her.
There's that line by James Baldwin. He says, "Do I really want to be integrated into a burning house?" And I've been chatting about this a lot with a lot of artists lately, and specifically with America's current political climate. Mm-hmm. And right after he wrote this, he moved to Paris. He writes this thing and he leaves. He does not want to be integrated into a burning house. In Paris, he does some of his best art making, both for joy, fiction books, and some of his best essay writing. Oh, and we're in the dark. That's James Baldwin. Yeah. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
The ghost of James Baldwin turned off the lights on us.
Yeah, let's just take a pause.
Oh, that's funny.
If we walk,
That's how we used to spend our nights during bombings in Ukraine.
Really?
Yeah, underground, just knowing nothing with no lights, electricity, and heat.
You know what? This kind of things that James Baldwin and Nina Simone did, like leaving the country and just refusing what was happening here and go to different countries, seeking for their freedom. And it is fascinating for me because people like flee their homes, their countries to come to America because it is the land of freedom, as we could say, as the narrative, the global narrative says. But for James Baldwin and Nina Simone, they didn't find it here. They didn't find that they belong and they are thriving here. The idea of America, is it true for everyone? Like, is it really true? It is a land of dreams and justice and equality and things. So I just admire both of them, their courage and their eagerness to have the life they want to, even if it's not here in America.
Now, I want to emphasize the difference is their life is not technically unsafe in this place. They have the privilege and the choice to leave.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You left because of a lack of safety. You could be technically safer here in Pittsburgh. Has that impacted the art making in any way? Are you more creative? Are you less? Are you bored?
Yeah, I used to be creative the same way I am now, but I feel like I can do more, and I feel this kind of an obligation that I'm on a mission now. Before it felt like it's about myself, and now it feels like I have to do it because no one else would do it. Sometimes I just feel why people cannot just live, move on with their lives. And for millions of years, animals on this planet were just living, grabbing food from the ground and having fun and having everything that they need, and the nature will help them be in harmony with the world around it. But human beings, sometimes I'm thinking like, what happened and where and why something happened to these species that we are the way that we are. We are jealous. We think that we know better. We order other human beings what to do. I just don't understand. It's so frustrating to me.
About the creativity, I'm much creative here and much productive, if you would say, than I've been in Sudan. Since I came here, I wrote and published 2 books. One of them already in English, and one is being like halfway to be fully in English. And of course, it didn't publish yet, but it's been in the translations. And I'm working on the 3rd one. So the writers who came from everywhere in this earth, here to City of Asylum, to Pittsburgh, still they can be value thing to the community, because still as they engage with the community, they give and take. In Sudan, we have so many taboos. Mm-hmm. We have religious taboo. We can't say anything that, even in artistic form, that questioning religious or God or any kind of authorities. It could be like social authorities, fathers, brothers, community, imams, the leaders of the community, and of course it could be political authority or traditional authority, and of course religion. Now I feel I have so like vast room of freedom, so I can think about anything I want to without fear, and I can express this thinking through my writing. America gave me a lot, and of course in the other side also it took a lot, because the sense of my family the sense of the spontaneously with the friends, because in Sudan you could go to anyone at any time without any previous appointment, without any text, without any plans or preparation. So I miss that, and I miss the warmth of the family. But everything, it has two coins, I'm not complaining.
It's the same for us as Ukrainians, and I miss the same things, because you can go to your relatives or your friends, just knock on the door and make yourself a coffee, and it's okay, because when you are in such problematic environments, the feeling of unity is way more strong there. So people just know that being together is way better than being alone.
Rania, you participated in a panel discussion at the Atlantic Festival in DC in September, and the topic was about censorship from abroad as a forewarning of what could be, which is related to what we're talking about in terms of the context of censorship here in the US and how obviously it exists in so many ways, but when you compare it to other countries, there's also lessons to be learned, and also there's just a difference. Do you feel like the audience there really received what you said, or how do you feel like it was received?
Yeah, that day I felt people received it very well. Not because I spoke very well, no, because what happened from the Sudanese people and how they fought against the censorship was different than here, or than could be here. The censorship, unfortunately, could be even here, which I didn't imagine before in America could be censorship, but it is. And in Sudan, we have a long history about censorship. For example, in 1985, 40 years from now, the Islamic thinker, Mahmoud Muhammad Taha, have been persecuted in the public square because of his writing and his thinking and his political opinion. Because he's Islamic thinker, so he was touching the untouchable. So the Muslim Brotherhood with the regime at that time, they just sentenced him with death and they hanged him in a square, publicly. But what came after that, from that, his students, if we could say, because he had this party and also a movement or a group that called themselves Al-Fikra, which means the thought or the idea. They were distributing his book because it was banned from the public. So they were distributing it in secret. And when the internet came, they created this website and put all books, PDF format, and it's free for everyone to download. Even the website was banned from Sudan. But if I live here or I live in any other country, I could download the book and then send it through the email to someone in Sudan,
Or how to use a VPN.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that the Sudanese people found ways to fight back against the regimes. For example, we have this filmmaker, Hadoud, we call him Hadoud, his name is Hisham. And he made a documentary film about the government attacking and killing people in Nuba Mountains. And of course in Darfur as well, because they made a genocide in Darfur and Nuba Mountain and Blue Nile. So he smuggled himself there and he filmed the whole documentary in secret, of course, and the documentary called The Beat of Antonov, because the Sudanese troops and government literally were bombarding the villages and the kids, the women and everyone, and could burn villages by this. So they were killing its own people. Of course, there wasn't any way for this documentary to be screened in Sudan. So he Like it started with the other people helping to screen this in cities from city to city with the flash drive in a very basic way, computer and projector, and it could be anywhere. And one of those places were in my house, where we screened it in my house and also coordinated it on the same time in another location. Because if we did it today here and tomorrow there, this will be so risky. Because it is risky anyway. But one of those wouldn't do it because the authority would know about that. So we did it, and we invited people in those two locations. Around 300 people showed up and watched the movie, and that was so much risk, not only for me as Rania, but for my whole family, my daughter Ragad at that time, and sisters and brothers and everyone, and the people who came to watch. So all of us, we could go to jail, but still we did it, and not only in Madani city, my city. It happened in many ways. Also, just I want to say that people would find ways to do that.
Find art, always.
Yes.
Since the beginning of time.
Yes.
We'll find ways to make it a part of our life. I don't like the systems that ban art, but I love the systems of, like, I love the idea of black marketing a book. Like, I think I just am in love with the image of, instead of passing drugs on the street, passing poems.
and being in danger for spreading some poems. I'm in the middle of translating a series of books that were written in gulags by Ukrainian writers that were persecuted for their writing, and some of them were persecuted only for poetry, in just poetic lines, for which they go to jail for 10 years. So they would write on cigarette papers secretly. Then you have to swallow it. You have to wait a couple of weeks for someone to come to visit you. It can be your mother, your sister, because you were allowed only a couple of times in a year to have someone visiting you. And then every time you would go to the restroom, you would have to, release yourself with that paper and then swallow it again.
Oh my God.
Until you would have someone to come. Then you would go during the session, during the meeting. You would go to the restroom. You would release it again, and that person would go after you, and will swallow it, and then under the convoy that will take you to Moscow from Siberia for 2 weeks. You would have a train trip to Moscow. You would be under the convoy. You were just a visitor, but you would be convoyed to Moscow. And every time you go to the restroom, the convoyers would check on you. So you would release yourself and you would eat it again, and then only after Moscow, you would be safe to have it just in your pocket. And then you would figure out the way. You're not involved. Yeah, you're just the mother of the guy that wrote poetry and went to jail for 10 years, just writing a modernist poetry, which is not socialist, So you would have to figure out the way to send it to Poland or Yugoslavia, and then it would be sent to Germany, and from there it would be sent to the United States and will be published somewhere here in Ukrainian diaspora circles, or would be read on the radio.
Can I ask, how many artists can you house? Timelines? Is there a graduation? Is it like peace, it was good to see you? What's the process?
It's a good question. The City of Asylum in Pittsburgh has evolved over 20 years to be able to house 7 writers and their families at a time. And in general, we commit to 3 years on average, but usually that lasts longer. So we commit to supporting the writers once they arrive, obviously with essentials of housing, a stipend, healthcare, professional development support through the university that's sponsoring them, but also we try to connect them with other colleagues or people, artists, writers who are living in Pittsburgh or in our network that might be able to support them through mentorship, because being a successful artist here in the US, if you're born here, is already quite challenging. And so if you come from another place, you might have a language barrier. You're basically starting at zero, and you have no one who knows about your work necessarily, maybe a couple people, but in general, you need to build an audience. You need to know how to translate your work to different audiences here, to American audiences. Do you connect with the people who you share a cultural or national identity with, or do you not? And so we work with the writers to find out, like, who do you want to connect to while you're here? Do you want to connect with other Ukrainians or Sudanese communities, or would you rather like hold off on that? And that's a different answer for different writers for different reasons. We have a pretty big, we call it Jazz Poetry Festival every year. We invite international musicians and writers and poets to come and collaborate on different events. And so our writers are always involved in that. This past year, we started to provide each writer with the opportunity to either curate a program here or feature their own work at a program. We also support the writers with just learning how to navigate going to the doctor, healthcare, anything that comes up in the day-to-day, as well as their careers. We provide translations for writers for at least one novel or like a collection of short stories or poetry. So we commission translations into English so that their work can be read by an English reading audience. And that usually takes longer than 3 years, but sometimes it doesn't. It kind of just depends on a lot of different factors.
I want to stress how important it is to support City of Asylum so they can continue doing what they are doing. I don't know about my city. I just saw statistics about New York, that in New York it is 64,000 writers living right now. I mean, in Ukraine, probably the same amount of writers. And a lot of those writers are brilliant writers that fight for truth in life. And they have no way to continue doing it in many cases. And City of Asylum is one of the organizations that helps the world to be a better place. It's only 7 writers, but it's 7 lives, and we should somehow expand the amount of saved writers that can spread truth in the world. You know what I mean?
Any last words, thoughts, ideas, curiosities, jokes?
I just remembered a little thing that I've already faced: censorship in the States. I was given an interview to one of the major universities in the States last month. Trump was already elected, and I used the word diversity. And after the interview, they said it was a beautiful interview, it's so good, but we have to tell you that we are not allowed to use the word diversity anymore. It's a new directive from a new president's office. I'm like, say it again, please. Just, you don't have to use the word diversity anymore. Something to keep in mind, that not only Ukraine has a border with Russia, but also the United States have border with Russia. The wars in this world are not so far away that people here can think. So we have to stay together and fight for the truth in this world, because there is no other way.
That is our time today, and I am so very grateful for each and every one of you. If you want to support City of Asylum, please make sure to check them out online at cityofasylum.org. Again, that's cityofasylum.org. Donations are greatly appreciated, and trust me, I have seen it firsthand. They do beautiful things. So share, subscribe, like, all the things. I will see you next week. Peace, love.